Shalom, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us this evening to New England meets Team Israel on the way to the Olympics. Please note that this event is broadcasted live on Facebook. My name is Nadler and I am the Jewish National Fund USA's Israel Emissary to the region, and I will be your moderator tonight. So without further ado, I'm happy to introduce you to Ambassador Meron Reuben, Consul General of Israel to New England. Ambassador?
Thank you, Dar. Good evening, shalom, and thank you for all of you for joining us on this Israeli-American baseball celebration. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Israeli baseball team for their unprecedented achievement of representing Israel at the 2021 Olympic Games in Tokyo. Mazal tov on this historic feat, and good luck, friends. B'atzlacha chaverim. We stand with you. The Israeli Consulate in Boston is honored to be hosting tonight's panel, together with the Jewish National Fund USA and the Israeli Association of Baseball. We appreciate all that you have done to support the team's journey and make this dream come true. We are very proud to be joined by New England's representatives of Team Israel, the Sharon, Massachusetts native, Jake Fishman, and Jeremy Bleich of Lexington, Massachusetts. Thank you for your time, guys. We are aware of your tough training schedule, but appreciate you stopping by at our Zoom in between. The same goes, of course, to Team Israel's General Manager, Peter Kurz. Thank you for your dedicated work on fostering generations of Israeli baseball enthusiasts. I would like to extend my gratitude to Risa Aronson, the Boston Board President of JNF USA, for joining us tonight, and to Dar Nadler, JNF USA's Israel Emissary in New England, for moderating this panel. I invite you all to come and root for Team Israel in the exhibition games in Hartford, Connecticut on July the 14th and 15th, where I will try throwing the first pitch. I have already started practicing. Congratulations again to Jake, Jeremy, Peter, and all of Team Israel for an incredible achievement. Israel is proud of you. B'atzlacha.
Thank you, Ambassador. And thank you for having us today. Jewish National Fund USA is proud to co-sponsor this event. Please welcome our next speaker, JNF USA's Boston Board President, Risa Aronson. Risa?
Thank you, Dar. Good evening. I am so happy to be with all of you tonight. I want to send a special thank you to our Consul General of Israel to New England, Meron Reuben. Thank you for hosting this wonderful event and for sharing the miracle of Israel's Olympic baseball team with the New England community. I want to begin by acknowledging Team Israel and its General Manager, Peter Kurz. Not many of you may know that Jewish National Fund USA has been supporting Team Israel for years. 14 years to be exact. So we are even more proud of their unprecedented achievement of getting to the Olympics. I want to take this opportunity to tell you just a little bit about JNF USA. Unparalleled in the Jewish philanthropical world, Jewish National Fund USA's strategic vision has been and always will be to ensure a strong, secure, and prosperous future for the land and people of Israel. Everything we do, every project, initiative, and campaign we take on is integral to our vision of building and connecting to our land. We plant trees, build houses and parks, source water solutions, buy fire trucks, and improve the lives of people with special needs. We boost tourism, support Aliyah, promote Zionist education and engagement, build medical centers and trauma centers, fund agricultural and culinary research, and run an American semester abroad high school in Israel. This past year, many of us felt as though time had stood still. But at Jewish National Fund, USA, we certainly didn't keep still at all. We have continued to keep our promise to the land and people of Israel, and we had a record-breaking year with total money raised. We continue to be there every day through times of prosperity and, yes, times of crisis, always with our eye on building a brighter future. Now, whether you are supporting Jewish National Fund USA or any other pro-Israel organization, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and to remind us that it is our collective responsibility to make sure we are doing all we can to enhance our connection to Israel, to stay engaged, and to feel inspired by our actions. Once again, I want to thank the Israeli Consulate for pulling this event together. And I know I speak for everyone here when I say that we can't wait to watch and cheer our Olympic team on to victory. So go Israel, thank you, Toda Rabah, and enjoy the program.
Thank you, Risa. This was so inspiring. And now I'm happy and proud to open our panel discussion with our distinguished panelists who brought so much pride to all of us by making it to the Olympics. You are welcome to share your questions using the Q&A window below, and we will do our very best to address as many as time allows. As part of Team Israel Pre-Olympics training camp, as Ambassador Reuben mentioned, they will be playing in Hartford, Connecticut on July 14th and 15th at 10:30 a.m. Please note more information on the chat box. This is the first time ever that Israel is making it to the Olympics with its baseball team. And none of this would have been possible without our first panelist, Peter Kurz. Peter is Team Israel's general manager and the man who said they are going to make it to the Olympics 5 years ago, and everybody thought he was crazy. Together with Peter, I'm happy to welcome Team Israel's leading pitchers, Jake Fishman and Jeremy Bleich. Fun fact, as Ambassador Reuben already mentioned, both of them are originally from the New England area. So Peter, let me start with you. Can you please share with us a little bit more about Team Israel?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you, Dar. Thank you, Risa, for those kind words. And thank you all of the New England community for being here with us today. We look forward to coming to the Northeast United States, including New England, and having our exhibition game there. Maybe I'll just share the screen a little bit and share a little presentation I've got. If somebody can allow me to share the screen. I'm not allowed to share the screen. There we go. And I've got a little bit of a presentation here about Team Israel. Let me just get this here. Okay. Okay, there we go. Just a little bit about the IAB and the Israel Association of Baseball, a few words before, and then I'll introduce the players to you. First of all, about the IAB, about baseball in Israel. We have over 1,000 kids today playing baseball all over the country, from Beersheba in the south up until Misgav in the north. We're looking to double and triple that number in the next few years, and you'll understand a little bit why we think we can do that, with the strong support also of the JNF in building fields, and hopefully as well with the success of our players in the Olympics. Now it's going backwards. In addition to the regular play, we also have something called Baseball Likulam, which is our attempt at reconciliation between the different people in Israel, where we bring together Jewish Israeli kids together with Arab Israeli kids, and have them play baseball together. So really bringing cooperation through sports into Israel. We have some excellent programs we're opening up now in Ramleh, in Beersheba, in Salome, in the north of Israel as well. And we really see the success of this program. And hopefully maybe one day in some future Olympic team, some future national team we can have, as well as having Jewish Israeli kids, we can also have some Arab Israeli kids as well. In terms of national teams, every year we send national teams overseas. The Olympic team is one of our national teams. Another national team that's going in a few weeks overseas is our U18 team. They're going to the European Championship. 2 years ago, they played in the B pool and they won the B pool of the European Championship. And this year they'll be going and competing in the A pool. And I'm very, very proud of that team because that's all kids who grew up in Israel, grew up in the program in Israel, grew up playing baseball in Israel. And it's a real, hopefully a real prospect of future teams that we can have and future kind of players that we can have here in Israel. In terms of baseball facilities, we're also opening up new facilities. There's tractors right now on the ground, bulldozers and tractors on the ground in Beit Shemesh, building the Beit Shemesh field. It's phase one of the field, which is just more or less flattening the field and making it playable for baseball. So we've worked on this for about the last 7 or 8 years together with the JNF, raising the money for the field. In addition to that, we also have a field going up right now also in Renana, which will be a dual purpose field of baseball, and also in the outfield there'll be a place for soccer. But that's also, having these two complexes is very important for us because the more you have there, the more fields you have there, the more opportunities you have for kids to play, the more kids will come and play. Those are our two biggest areas in Renana and in Beit Shemesh where baseball is played today. And there's no doubt that we can develop those areas even more. In addition to that, we have the Tel Aviv Sport Tech field. Anybody who's into Israel, has been to Israel, knows the Sport Tech field very well. This is a picture actually for the Maccabi games a few years ago. We're looking to put up lights there. We don't have lights yet. And to really expand that area of play and everything. And it's in the central park of Tel Aviv. And it's a really very good area to have baseball activity going on there. But you're here to listen about Israel and the International Forum. And that's what I'm going to tell you a little bit more about. Ironically, it started in Boston. The seeds of Israel baseball professionally started in Boston. That's where the idea of the Israel Baseball League started in probably about 2005. It started in the mind of a bagel man. Larry Barris was a bagel king of Boston. He actually sold bagels to the U.S. Army. I met with him in 2006 in New York, and I'll never forget that meeting. He told me he was going to bring professional baseball to Israel, and I said, "You must be crazy." And a year later, in 2007, the summer of 2007, we had 120 players, 6 teams. Art Shamsky was one of the managers. Ron Blomberg was one of the managers. There was a book written about it. You can see here some of the logos of the team. The Beit Shemesh Blue Sox and the Modi'in Miracle were there. And that's where, when somebody mentioned before that baseball really started 14 years ago, professional baseball, this was the first roots. Unfortunately, after that one summer, it was disbanded. Larry went bankrupt, was never seen again. And we had to start from scratch, but we made a lot of very strong connections there. In 2012, we were invited by MLB to come into the WBC qualifiers in Jupiter. As you can see from that picture, those 3 guys really helped us a lot. They were 3 recently retired players: Brad Ausmus, Gabe Kapler, and Sean Green. Brad Ausmus was the manager, and Gabe Kapler and Sean Green were player coaches. And they're today all managers and players or managers of Major League Baseball teams. Gabe Kapler of the Giants. Brad Ausmus is out of a job, but hopefully he'll get another one soon. In any case, in 2012, we lost in the qualifiers. 4 years later, in 2016, we won the qualifiers. Jeremy was on that team. We reached the second round. We went to the main tournament in 2017. Actually, Jeremy came to Israel in the January of 2017, which was a very famous documentary movie called Heading Home. Anybody who wants to can find it on Amazon. In 2017, we went to Korea. ESPN called us the Jamaican bobsled team, but we were definitely the Cinderella team because we won all 3 games in Korea, went on to Japan and defeated Cuba. The Cuban national team, imagine that, Israel national team defeating the Cuban national team. That was quite an achievement. This team was made because of what's called the heritage rule, which is what the World Baseball Classic has. It has the heritage rule, which states that anybody who can get citizenship for a country can play for that country without necessarily having citizenship. So because of the law of return of Israel, any American Jewish person could have citizenship. Basically, anybody who could prove that they have a grandparent who's Jewish could play for Israel. So a lot of Jewish players played for us without being Israeli. And that was the WBC. This is just some of the advertisements, some of the publications that were put out there. As I mentioned, we were called the Jamaican bobsled team. Brad Ausmus came to Israel, met with Shimon Peres, who was the president at the time, and met with him. We have some other advertisements here, some other pictures. After 2017 and our achievements in the World Baseball Classic, there was a question of what would happen next. And the World Baseball Federation announced that baseball was back in the Olympics. They announced what the qualifying conditions would be. I was listening to that, and I basically realized that we would have to win 4 tournaments in the summer of 2019 in order to qualify for the Olympics. It was quite a task. I sat with our manager at the time, Eric Holtz, who's our manager today. I sat with him in 2017, 2018 in a hotel in New York. I explained this all to him. He looked at me incredulously and said, you're crazy. And I said, yeah, but are you in? And he said, yeah, I'm totally in. I'm totally in. Everything's great. And we started building the team. And then the first thing to do was to bring players in Aliyah. We needed to have Israeli players. We needed to have Israeli players with passports, unlike the WBC. And guys made Aliyah and came on Aliyah. Anybody I asked to come on Aliyah came on Aliyah. You can see even Jake Fishman there in the middle there. Danny Valencia on the bottom. They all readily came. It's not an easy process to make Aliyah. We can ask them a little bit later what it's like for them. But it was, it was a process that they all went through. They all did it. They all did it readily. And 9 players came in 2018 and made Aliyah. 4 more in April of 2019. 4 more in July of 2019. And we ended up going to the European Championship B pool in the summer of 2019. These Olim Chadashim, these new immigrants, joined our veteran Israeli players. We went to the hotbed of baseball in Europe, which was Bulgaria. And we played. I think there were sheep grazing on the field. That's the way they were cutting the grass there. But we played there. These teams. We went 6-0. We defeated Russia in the finals. We won the B pool. 3 weeks later, we had to come back to Lithuania to play the other B pool winner. We defeated Lithuania. And 6 weeks later, we had to go to the European Championship to the A pool. We'd never been to the A pool before. This was in Germany. So it was a little bit difficult for Israel to go to Germany to play in Germany. My parents are Holocaust survivors. I know Jeremy's grandparents are Holocaust survivors. But we added some new players. Jeremy then made Aliyah, came and made Aliyah. Also Denny Valencia, also Ty Kelly. We were the last team to qualify for Germany. But in the beginning, we went 4-1 in the opening round. We defeated France, which meant that we were going up to the following week to our 4th European country in 10 weeks. And we were going to Italy to the Olympic qualifiers. In the end, we ended up in 4th place, which was fine because the top 5 teams were going to the European qualifiers. And Netherlands, Italy, and Spain, Israel, and the Czech Republic went to the European qualifiers. So we were there a week later, and the first game was against Spain. Don't forget, they were the number 3 team just a week before. We defeated Spain. The next game was against the Netherlands, who were the European champion just a week before. We defeated them. We then defeated Italy, and we were at 3-0. We were the best team there. We definitely shocked the competition. We had to win one of the next 2 games. We easily defeated South Africa, maybe to the chagrin of the ambassador, who was originally from South Africa, but we defeated them, and we were able to qualify for the Olympics. These are just some pictures of the players there celebrating on the field at the time. It was a great achievement for us. I went back to Israel and I met with the Olympic Committee there. And I said, listen, now, in addition to the 40, 45 athletes you have going to Tokyo, you have an additional 24 athletes. So it was a little bit daunting for them, but we're there. Today, the Israeli delegation has about 90 athletes altogether. So the baseball team makes up about a quarter of that. Unfortunately, anybody who knows Israeli politics also knows that the Israeli government is working on a budget that was approved in 2018, which is before we had a team. So we're not having money. We're getting some financial help, but not a lot of financial help. And together with the JNF, we're also raising money for the team, which is very helpful. In the Olympics, there'll be 6 teams altogether. Japan is as the host team. Korea and Mexico, who got in because of the Premier 12. The USA just qualified 2 weeks ago. So they're also in. And a 6th country is going to qualify in the next 3 days among Venezuela, Dominican Republic, or the Dutch or the Netherlands. So one of those teams will come in. Since then, we've gained more players. More players have made Aliyah. In 2019, Ryan Lavarnway, who's today playing in the major leagues, actually. He's with Cleveland in the major leagues. Hopefully he'll get sent down soon, but he's up there for about a week or so. Josh Zeid as well, and also a guy who is probably the most pedigreed player we have, which is Ian Kinsler. He's been a 4-time All-Star. He made Aliyah. As soon as he retired, he came to Israel, made Aliyah. That's another interesting story there, but we'll talk about that later on, perhaps. And he's readily on the team. 2 weeks ago, we had a training camp in Arizona. Ian was there, Danny was there. They were like the rest of the guys, and they were all getting ready. And Team Israel is definitely ready. Our goal of reaching 2,500 players is dependent on two things, actually. The one that I mentioned is the building of the two fields. With the help of the JNF, we're building these two fields. And the old adage, if you build it, they will come, is very, very true. And kids are interested, and more kids are interested. Once we have a field in Beit Shemesh, it'll alleviate the parents from traveling all around Beit Shemesh, because we had 2 or 3 fields out of Beit Shemesh. So just the kids will be able to come there on their own. And also the field in Renana it will be a big push for us. And the second thing is a medal. If we can win a medal in the Olympics, people didn't know about judo 25 years ago in Israel until Yael Arad won her medal. And people don't know about baseball very much in Israel today. They know a little bit more because of our achievements the last couple of years, but they still don't know that much about it, but they'll hear a lot more. We're getting a lot of press now as we're going towards the Olympics. It'll be televised. All our games will be televised. By the way, the first 2 games are July 29th and 30th at 6 a.m. Boston time. And the first game on July 29th is against Team USA. The second game is against Korea. So we look forward to having all our fans out there watching on television. And the last thing is we can do it. And we're looking forward to having 24 players going to Japan. And we're looking forward to having the Jewish nation behind us as the 25th player. So thank you very much. And I'll throw the ball back to Dar now, and we'll continue this seminar.
Peter, thank you so much. This was fascinating. Also for our audience, just know that Peter is joining us from Israel. So he stayed awake very, very late at night just to be with us. So thank you so much, Peter. Quick question before we start that we have on our Q&A. Would there be any autograph opportunities in Connecticut?
Sure. Connecticut, the guys will be there, ready to autograph things. Yes, definitely, for sure. I mean, that's what baseball players are there for, right? Jake, I'm not sure if Jake is going to be there, but Jeremy will definitely be there. Jake is currently, maybe I'll just introduce our other 2 players. Jake is currently playing for the AAA team of the Miami Marlins, successful pitcher. And Jeremy is also a retired pitcher, retired from professional play, but playing for Team Israel. He was with us in 2019 in the qualifiers. He was also with us in 2017 in the WBC.
Thank you. Okay, Jake, let me take it away from professional baseball and ask you, what was it like growing up Jewish here in America?
So for me, I grew up in Sharon, Massachusetts, which happens to be a very Jewish town. So I had a lot of Jewish friends growing up, which I'm thankful for. And then I ended up going on to Union College, which also has a decent Jewish population at that school. So, I felt pretty comfortable growing up with a lot of Jewish friends. And it wasn't really until I got to professional baseball where I was like the only Jewish guy around anywhere. So, you start to realize that, there's not that many Jews that play professional sports. And you're kind of searching for that community and those similarities between you and these other people. And I didn't realize, how much I was missing that until I got together with the other guys on Team Israel. And I was like, wow, we're all so similar. And, it just made me realize like, wow, I've been missing out on very strong connections that, that other people get inside their own communities within professional baseball.
Jeremy, would you want to add a little bit of your experience?
Sure, thank you. I definitely can echo some of Jake's sentiments about being in professional baseball and often confused by not being able to find similarities in backgrounds. I think whenever I walked into a professional baseball clubhouse, there's always like a buffer period of time, 2 or 3 weeks, where you start to learn not only people's names, but not only where they come from as well, but kind of who they are, what are their backgrounds, why do they act the way they act, or we're all products of our environment. And I think that buffer period takes different shape with different teammates. But I think with Team Israel, we were able to come in into the clubhouse with these guys. I was there in 17, as Peter mentioned, and 19 as well. And that buffer period is basically gone. You come into a place where you don't have to explain why you grew up a certain way or what your background is, or maybe I'm not afraid to share that my grandparents were Holocaust survivors with the group, in an Israeli team clubhouse versus, a melting pot type of clubhouse in a professional setting. So that was my professional experience. In terms of growing up Jewish, always a big part of my childhood, and how I grew up and how I was raised, and certainly the practices themselves of Judaism, but also the cultural and family strength that we often associate ourselves with as being Jews. So that was a big part of my youth, a big part of my identity now. As I've gotten older, I've learned more, and just being a part of my family and being Jewish is always on my sleeve.
So in light of everything you just shared, how does it feel now to play for the state of Israel as an Israeli?
Incredibly special. I think, as I mentioned, those two worlds of my youth, and I mentioned my professional baseball experience, it's a colliding of those two worlds. As Peter mentioned, and I mentioned just previously, my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and my father passed away about 6 or 7 years ago. And it's always, since that time and on, I've learned more and more and tried to be more in touch with, just what my grandparents went through. And I think it has always shaped I've always had some, just never wanted to share, never want to get in what it meant to me. But I think this is a perfect opportunity for me, and I don't want to speak for Jake, but I'm sure he would echo the same feelings, is that it's a way for us to speak our feelings, to speak our strength without really talking about it. We can go out and we can play, we can be pesky, and we can, just compete. And I think that's part of our nature. So it's an incredible opportunity. It's an honor to play for Israel, and to bring back not only hopefully a medal, but to also just, trending excitement for the game as it continues to grow.
Jake, anything to add on that regard?
Yeah, I definitely feel just like Jeremy does. And, I didn't realize how connected I was to Team Israel and its mission until I actually went to Israel, and, and I go to the one baseball field they have, and I'm looking up at the fence, and I see that the field is dedicated to Ezra Schwartz, and he is actually from my hometown, and he was over in Israel, and he actually died in a terrorist attack. And I unfortunately never got to meet him, but he loved baseball, and that was just when I was like, I'm way more connected to this than I could have ever imagined.
So it's fair to say that it's way beyond sports.
Yes, definitely.
So either of you wants to share a little bit with us about your experiences in making Aliyah, and you can be honest.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it was an amazing time to just be able to go over there and, travel through Israel and experience the things that I hadn't gotten to experience yet, because I've always been doing baseball things in the summer. So I had never had an opportunity to do birthright or anything like that. But in terms of like the actual process, it was not super difficult. Just get all the documents together, bring them to the place, and basically check all the boxes.
Sounds very painless.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was also a great experience. Peter did a ton of work in the background, helping us and putting us in a position that, I think obviously it is an in-depth process, and some of us, just probably didn't see all the work that Peter did for us. But it also, for me personally, it was my, I think my fourth time that I had been in Israel, and I had joined the team late in 2019 once our season ended. So I had a kind of cool opportunity to go through the process individually with one of another kind of pioneer who helped Peter out with a lot of this Israel baseball work. And he took me through the process and was also my tour guide and bodyguard and everyone and anyone just kind of pointing out what I needed to know. So for me, it was a really cool process. I certainly would have liked to be part of the larger group, but also very thankful that I went through it individually and was able to learn more in the process and ask questions that maybe I maybe otherwise would have not been able to.
So speaking about,
shout out to Danny Grossman because he's in the audience.
Oh, there he is. Thanks, Danny.
I just want to mention maybe, if we're talking about Aliyah, I'll just tell the story maybe here about Ian Kinsler. Ian announced his retirement in February of 2019. And immediately I was in touch with him because I'd been in contact with him in the past. And right away he said, yeah, let me come to Israel. That'd be great. I'd love to make Aliyah. I said to him, okay, let's wait a few more months and fill out all the paperwork and everything. And about March, I said, listen, something is going on in the world. Maybe you should come a little bit quicker. And he said, okay, can you come next week? He said, yeah, I can come next week. And he ended up flying out from Dallas to New York. When he got to New York, he called me up and he said, listen, they might end up closing the country. Do you think I should still be coming and everything? I said, yeah, don't worry about it. They're not going to close the airport. It'll be fine. Not knowing if they would close the airport or not. And he ended up landing at 4:00 in the afternoon, actually the day before Purim. And at 8:00 in the evening, at 8:00 at night, Bibi Netanyahu went on television, the prime minister, and announced that there would be a quarantine period of 2 weeks for anybody who comes into Israel at that time. But he'd arrived 4 hours before, so he was fine for that. He ended up coming out to he was in the Don Hotel in Tel Aviv. There were 3 guests in the whole hotel. It was if people remember what was going on at that time, everybody was in a total panic. He came out to the fields. He went out to see all the kids out there. We actually went to the Interior Ministry, and they told him that they won't see him. And I tried to convince them and everything. They said, you know what, we'll see him, but he's got to wear a mask and gloves. At the time, mask and gloves was like unheard of. Now today we're very much used to it. But I said, listen, Ian, you got to wear a mask and gloves. He said, no problem. He came out, he did that. He got his passport, he got his citizenship. After 3 days, he had to go back. And it was a great visit. I also just wanted to mention Ezra Schwartz. I had forgotten to mention it earlier. The Renana field will be named after Ezra Schwartz. Ezra's uncle and cousins live in Renana, and they've been very instrumental in raising the money for this field. And we really wanted to honor, I never knew Ezra personally, but we really wanted to honor him. As Jake said, he was killed in a terrorist attack in Israel. He was a huge baseball fan. He's from the Boston area. His family's from there. And we'll be dedicating the field in Renana to Ezra. And in addition, the last thing I just want to mention about Boston, 2 of our players are very much connected to the Red Sox. 2 of our players went with the Red Sox to their few World Series victories, but they were there. And one was Ian Kinsler a few years ago. He was one of the Red Sox players, and the other one was Ryan Lavarnway, who a number of years ago was with the Red Sox as the catcher, winning the World Series. So thank you.
So speaking about this transformation from America to Israel and vice versa sometimes, as we all know, your first game on July 29th is going to be against Team USA, coached by no other than Jerry Weinstein. Jeremy, how does that make you feel?
That's a good question. I think it's a product of the high amount of turnover in this game, and just Jerry's been around a long time and made a lot of good connections, and a lot of good networking within the game. I'm excited to see him. He wished me a happy birthday last week, and I wanted to start the smack talk early, but I held off. I look forward to seeing him. I know that he's excited. I think it'll be really quality baseball, and I think given the fact that there's good players on all these teams, I think it'll make for a good setting. But I look forward to see Jerry, and I'm excited to be able to wave at him when the game starts.
Peter, Jake, can you even maintain these friendly relationships when you're like so focused on winning?
I feel like once you get on the field, you kind of forget, who is on the other team. You remember them more as numbers and analytics rather than the name on their back. And for me, I almost feel like I know, some of the guys on the USA team. So it kind of brings you back to reality a little bit. You have to step back and it's the Olympics, it's the biggest stage ever. And then you look and you see a person that and you're like, okay, I've played against these guys before. It's still the same game. It's still the same, people that I've been playing against. We can do this.
I've been involved in European baseball play for the last 20 years or so. I was also on the European Baseball Association vice president for a number of years. Ironically, I believe it was 2017, we played in the European Championship B pool, and we lost to Austria in the final game. And Shlomo Lipitz, who's the legendary Shlomo Lipitz of Israel baseball, was the starting pitcher there, and he was pitching against the Austrian pitcher, who was his teammate in one of the New York leagues. So they were teammates together in the New York League, and then they were pitching against each other in the European Championship in 2017. So you find those kind of situations happen all the time, especially in Major League Baseball, where guys are traded all the time. It'll be fun seeing Jerry over there. We'll shake hands before the game, and afterwards, during the game, we'll be on opposite sides, and that's fine. That's baseball.
So somebody on the chat is asking if you can name, I guess he's referring all of you, if you can name the 24 players.
He's probably asking me that question because I'm the one who can. Right now we have an extended roster of about 50 players, where if you look at the main ones that are probabilities, there's probably about 30 players who are good possibilities to be on the team. And our job over the next few weeks will be to reduce that number to 24. It's difficult to say who that 24 will be. We actually had a Zoom call today with the coaching staff talking about that. We have weekly Zoom calls with the coaching staff. It won't be easy to get down to 30 to 24 players. We have a lot of good players. And unfortunately, not everybody can play. We only can take 24 players. We're also going to the European Championship in September. So hopefully there'll be an opportunity for some other players to do that as well. So I don't want to, where are we? June 22nd, June 21st. Let's not put the horse before the carriage. The first game is July 29th, over a month away. A lot of things can happen. There can be injuries. There can be call-ups. So a lot of things can still happen. We have one player who's playing in the majors. Actually, two players who are playing in the majors. But one is Dean Kramer, who's playing for Baltimore. And Dean Kramer is from birth an Israeli. His parents are Israeli. He was born in the United States, but his parents are Israeli. He's played in Israel national teams for 7 or 8 years. He hasn't played lately because he's in the major leagues, but he's played for us for 7 or 8 years. We'd love to have him. We probably won't because you can't have players who are on the 40-man roster. But the team will be selected and be announced in the next few weeks.
Thank
These
you.
two guys will be on. So neither of you have to worry about being on the team.
So, Jake, did you always know that you wanted to be a professional baseball player?
I did, but it wasn't really until I was in college that I made the decision to work towards it. It was more of a dream, as a younger kid. And then the older I got, the closer I started seeing it becoming a reality. And then college hit and I just hit the ground running. And really dedicated everything towards it, and it ended up paying off. So,
Jeremy?
Hard to remember exactly what my dreams were, but in high school, I think some of my the steam picked up in terms of achieving that goal or being a professional baseball player. I think it was pretty clear out of high school that I was going to go to college and get my degree before pursuing any sort of baseball career. But a couple of years into college, it started to become a reality. A lot of scouts and showing up to games and just speaking with agents and possible representation for the draft, and then finally achieved that goal in 2008 when I was drafted by the Yankees. So I played for what's that?
Who were you drafted by?
The Yankees.
Who?
That's right. So achieved that goal, and then I ended up playing for 11 parts of 11 seasons, 12 seasons actually. So I last played in 2019. I actually pitched in the major leagues in 2018. So not too far removed, and in a really good place, and in terms of the support that the Pirates are giving me now to be ready for Tokyo.
So what would each of you say to a 9-10-year-old that this is his dream or her dream now?
I would, I think it relates, it covers the world of baseball, covers, life in general. I think what we're doing, Jake and I and the other 22 guys, what our goal is and what I think get most proud about is, encouraging someone to step outside their comfort zone. And I think if you talk to any young, Israeli kid who, hopes and dreams about playing more baseball, let alone Major League Baseball, professional baseball, or even playing college baseball, whether it be in the United States or somewhere else, just giving them that hope and that courage to continue to step outside their comfort zone, pursue a dream that may not be mainstream. Obviously, baseball is becoming more mainstream, but not there yet. So I think it's more so, just continuing to support the program, play for the program, hopefully bring more attention to them so that kids can look and say, it didn't feel as comfortable, but maybe now I should pursue this dream that is not mainstream.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, just continue to enjoy the game. As you grow older, enjoy it, play it with a smile on your face, and keep striving towards that goal that you have of continuing to play.
So we have another question from our audience. Is it difficult to prepare for the Olympics or any tournament without spending significant time with your teammates?
I would say it's not just, and we kind of touched on this before, where we were talking about like how we came together as a team, just meeting each other for the first time, and it's like there's an immediate connection. There's no, there's really no like having the small talk, like you just get right into it. And this team is so close that I don't think anybody is worried at all about, only getting a little bit of time before the games actually start.
Okay, fair. Peter, I'm interested in knowing how you became so involved in baseball in Israel, out of all places. What's your story, Peter?
Okay, my story goes back a ways. I was born in the United States to European parents, so I had many relatives in Israel. We used to go to Israel very often. We went to Israel in 1967, 2 weeks after the Six-Day War, and that was an incredible experience. We were there for the whole summer. I was 10 years old at the time, and I remember going to Jerusalem for the first time, being in front of the Western Wall, where today it's a beautiful plaza. At that time, it was all rubble because Israel had just taken down all the buildings that were built onto the Western Wall, and just coming there with masses of Israelis, being there for the first time seeing it for the first time, going to Bethlehem, going to Hebron, going to all these places for the first time, and seeing it for the first time. And that really didn't put the Israeli bug into me. And 2 years later, in 1969, growing up in New York, the New York Mets won the World Series, the Miracle Mets. So I can say that those two events that happened to me as a child 50 years ago really put me to where I am now. I've been living in Israel for 32 years, happily here, very happily. All three of my kids are here. My granddaughter's here. Volunteering for baseball in Israel, working for the IIB for over 25 years, as a coach, as a manager, as a general manager. Very happy to be with these guys and to be developing baseball in Israel, and hope to be able to see the fields developing and to see the number of players going up and doubling and tripling in the next few years. And that's just the greatest satisfaction in the world. So that's a lot of fun.
So do you see, like, how far in the future will we be able to have an Israeli team that are based on Israelis, originally Israelis, if at all?
We've got seven guys coming to the camp with these guys on July 7th, 7 Israelis, native Israelis. There 4 of them are in the army because the army allows certain privileges to players who are professional players. And the 4 of them are in the army doing their army service, but also playing baseball. They've released them for a few weeks now to be able to come to this training camp. So unfortunately, baseball will not be in the 2024 Olympics in Paris, but it will be in the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. And if this team has 4 or 5 native Israelis and 20 new Israelis, I hope that the team in 2028 will maybe have the opposite number. And we can have a lot more native Israelis on there who learn the game in Israel, play the game in Israel, just like the U18 team. The U18 team that we're sending to the European Championships is that kind of team. But I really like to hold out the hope there also for Israelis growing up in Israel, but also for Jewish American kids growing up in America playing baseball who want to make Aliyah, come to Israel, come live in Israel. It's a beautiful country. We love it. Come be there and take a vacation and then make Aliyah.
So we have some more questions from the audience. How difficult it is to travel halfway around the world to compete?
I don't think it'll be particularly difficult. I think, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, opening ceremonies is the 23rd of July and our first game is 6 days later. So in terms of any rust we may have due to the timing, I'm sure we'll be working out, during those days and be able to kind of acclimate to the weather and the timing. And I don't think there will be any issue whatsoever. If there is any fatigue, I'm sure that people's energy and it'll be made up for just by the excitement for the games.
Thank you.
If anything, these guys are going to have a lot of pent up energy because they're not going to be allowed to leave the Olympic Village, only to go to the games and the events. They can't go around Tokyo. They can't go around Japan. So they'll be biting at the bit to get out of there and to really get on the field and be playing.
Which brings me to my next question regarding Tokyo. So we already kind of know that the games will be without crowd. Is that in any way affecting the game in any way?
It was just announced today that it will be without a foreign crowd, but there will be up to 10,000 Japanese allowed into every game. So there will be a crowd and there'll be 10,000 Japanese at those games. Jeremy, tell them a little bit what it was like with the WBC to have the Japanese fans there.
It was special. We actually played in Korea first and then played in Japan. I think there were almost 50,000 people in Tokyo Dome that night. So it was loud. Japan loves baseball, so they're really good fans and understand the game. They respect the game and respect the players, and there will be a buzz no matter what. I think adrenaline will be a huge factor, and just it's great that Japan is a host country because they're such big baseball fans. I think that the stage will be perfect.
Okay, you convinced me. Another question from the audience that I know the answer, but I will have Peter answer that. Will they sing Hatikva in Hartford?
Of Of course they'll sing Hatikva in Hartford. We always sing Hatikva wherever we go, and the guys all have to learn it. That's one of the things that they're gonna have in training camp. They're gonna have to learn Hatikva, the words to it. A lot of them know it, but some of them don't.
We won't test it right now.
They what?
We won't test it right
No,
now.
no, definitely don't test it. But yes, we'll be singing Hatikva. There might be some surprises as well.
So this is a great opportunity to share with our audience that actually people who would want to actually stand with you on the field and sing Hatikva with the players will be able to do so with all kinds of sponsorship opportunities that we are offering, and we will share the information in a few days. So that's something to remember.
As I mentioned before, the Israeli government, the budget of the Israeli government does not provide us with enough money to fund this team. So we're looking to raise the money, and we're definitely looking to do it at these kind of events and with merchandising and everything, as we've been reminding everybody. In addition to that, there's opportunities also to help support us build fields in Israel. And we're looking for a lot of support to help build the fields all through the JNF. They've been great partners, but whoever can help us, please do so.
So we're closing to end this discussion. Jeremy, without thinking too long, first of all, unmute yourself. Without thinking too long, what's your favorite Israeli food?
Oh, shawarma.
Jake, you had a few seconds to think.
I was also gonna say shawarma.
No, come on.
That was my immediate initial reaction, and he stole it from me.
And last question, what's your favorite Israeli city, Jake?
Jerusalem.
Tel Aviv for me.
Correct. You can say, what did you say, Jeremy?
Tel Aviv.
Thank you. And Peter?
Givatayim. Where I am right now. Here I am in Givatayim.
That's a good.
In the morning.
That's a good one. Very unbelievable, but it's a good one. So, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I think everything you just said was very, very, very inspiring to everyone. And again, thank you for taking the time from your very busy schedule. Thank you to Ambassador Reuben once again and the Israeli Consulate for hosting this event. And to our audience, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us tonight. And we trust that you'll cheer Team Israel. The recording from this program will be available on the Israel in Boston Facebook and YouTube pages. So good night, shalom, and go Team Israel.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.